What I'll do is I'll just walk you through the graph. It's pretty simple. We're just talking about over time how we think the demand is going to be for industries relative to the demand before the crisis, pre-COVID. We're in the lockdown phase now. We are moving from lockdown into stabilization, which we think is a period of time that is uncertain in duration, where we don't have a vaccine or cure or other reason to assume we are back to normal, which I do believe will happen. I just don't know exactly when, but we will have perhaps intermittent lockdown periods, and we'll have some restriction and certainly some anxiety on behalf of consumers and maybe even employees. So we're calling that stabilization in between. So what we've done is we've sort of mapped out a few industry types. We've done this more, but I'm just trying to give a few samples here. And we're trying to show what we think happens. So in this first one, it's non-emergency healthcare. So what happens? Well, in lockdown, there's pretty much none happening. During stabilization, it does ramp up, and at a certain point, when now that in this one, we may be allowed fully before the vaccine cure. I think we will. It may become after, and so where you see the bump, it may move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. But we believe that there's a bump above today's current demand level because we believe there is pent-up demand. You could imagine dentistry is like this, and a bunch of other services where I can delay it, but I have to get this done. And so we believe that there's that pent up demand, and then there's a ramp back down, and eventually in something like this, you get back to, I would say there's no reason to believe that we wouldn't have it the same way we do today. Perhaps in physio, to some degree, a slight bit moves virtual, but there may be some examples where that happens and some where it doesn't. Then we go to discretionary consumer products. So we make stuff, and you could include some services as well here, but let's start with products. We make stuff. And during the lockdown period, let's assume that we're deemed non-essential, and so we cannot actually even make it, and distributing is very hard. Again, there are exceptions to every rule, and there's e-commerce, but as a general rule, we couldn't do much during lockdown, and then we enter the stabilization phase. And what we see during the stabilization phase is we're able to make more and sell a little bit more, but we're nowhere near what we could do because maybe consumers are really not spending a lot, or maybe it's still hard to actually get our factories going or our service distributed, et cetera. And then we move to the vaccine or cure phase. And then afterwards, we assume eventually this will go back to normal. Now, again, there, like in everything, there's a but, because you could say that even after the vaccine, there is a recession that's going to be protracted after that period. And I believe that that will be the case. And so you could argue that just forget about the logistics and the health issues, that pure demand will be lower for some period of time, which just means that green line would stay below the dotted line for some period of time. And then we have a type of industry that is deeply impacted from a health standpoint by COVID. You sort of say travel and hospitality and large events. Sort of say, well, during lockdown and actually through a big portion of stabilization, there's going to be very little demand. It's going to be very hard to go. Restaurants maybe come first at a limited capacity. I don't think people are doing much discretionary travel for a long time. I don't think concerts are coming back for a long time. And you see we turn that curve up a little bit before vaccine and cure because of that. And then once the vaccine cure happens, we actually slope up significantly. However, even there, you'll notice it goes lower than the discretionary consumer products, because in addition to consumer spending power being abated for a long period of time, I do believe that there'll be some anxiety about doing those things even after the time where we have a vaccine or cure. Eventually, I do think that returns to normal. I know that not all agree with me on that. I do think we eventually will be traveling just like we do today, or like we did 8 weeks ago, I should say. But I do think that'll be a period of time where it's significantly below.